By 8 a.m., most people have already lost the day. Not because something terrible happened, not because life attacked them in some dramatic way, but because before their feet even touch the floor, they have already surrendered their mind to the outside world. They wake up and immediately flood themselves with noise, notifications, news, messages, deadlines, other people's opinions, other people's lives, other people's panic. And before they have had a single clean thought of their own, they are already reacting. Their nervous system is hijacked, their attention is fragmented, their peace is gone. They think they are starting a day, but in reality, they are entering a battlefield unarmed. This is the hidden epidemic of the modern morning. People do not begin the day with intention. They begin it with surrender. They do not wake up into clarity. They wake up into intrusion. Their first act is not thought, it is submission. They hand over their focus, their emotional state, and their direction to whatever appears first on a glowing screen. And then they wonder why their days feel chaotic, why their mood feels unstable, why their life feels reactive, hurried, and strangely empty. The Stoics understood something most people still ignore. The morning is not just the beginning of the day. It is the psychological blueprint for everything that follows. If your first hour belongs to distraction, the rest of the day will be spent trying to recover from a weakness you created before sunrise. But if your first hour belongs to awareness, discipline, and internal order, then you are no longer chasing the day, you are shaping it. This is why the Stoics treated the morning as sacred, not mystical, not sentimental, strategic. To them, the first moments of consciousness were not casual. They were decisive. They understood that a mind left unguarded in the morning becomes vulnerable for the rest of the day. The mind is soft when it wakes, open, suggestible, easily influenced. If you let the world rush in too early, it plants anxiety before you have built resistance. It installs urgency before you have chosen purpose. It creates dependency before you have established control. But there is another way to wake up. There is an ancient operating system for the mind that can completely change how you enter the day. It was not designed by influencers, productivity gurus, or modern self-help marketers. It was forged by men who lived under real pressure, men who ruled empires, men who survived slavery, men who understood uncertainty, hardship, chaos, and loss. And yet they cultivated a calm that the modern world can barely comprehend. This is the Stoic morning. Not a routine for aesthetic discipline, not a gimmick, a weapon, a way of reclaiming your mind before the world has a chance to colonize it. A set of internal protocols designed to make you steady, lucid, and unshakable before breakfast. The first thing you must do in the morning is something most people never do. Wake up with mortal gratitude. The average person wakes up already complaining. They complain that they are tired. They complain that it is too early. They complain about what the day will require. They open their eyes and instantly begin negotiating with reality. But the Stoic begins somewhere much deeper. He begins with the fact that he is alive at all. This may sound simple, but it is not simple. It is one of the most powerful psychological corrections you can make. Most people live as if another day is guaranteed. They behave as if time belongs to them. They postpone their discipline, their courage, their effort, their honesty, as if life is an endless supply. But it is not. You did not have to wake up today. Many people did not. Many people went to sleep believing they had another morning waiting for them. They were wrong. So the Stoic opens his eyes and remembers something brutal and freeing. Today is not owed, it is given. The awareness of mortality changes the emotional texture of the morning. Petty stress shrinks. Resentment weakens. The day becomes more vivid, more serious, more alive. You stop treating time like cheap paper and start treating it like gold. Mortal gratitude is not soft. It is not passive. It is a sharpening force. It cuts through laziness. It destroys entitlement. It reminds you that if this day is a gift, then wasting it is a form of blindness. The second thing you do is prepare for difficulty. Not with fear, not with pessimism, with realism. Modern culture tells people to picture a flawless day, a smooth day, a day where everything cooperates with their preferences. The Stoics did the opposite. They mentally rehearsed friction. They anticipated rudeness, delay, inconvenience, selfishness, and misunderstanding. Not because they were negative, but because they understood the mind. Whatever arrives unexpectedly has more power to disturb you. Whatever you have already admitted as possible loses part of its sting. Marcus Aurelius famously reminded himself in the morning that he would meet ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and selfish people. That line is not famous because it sounds poetic. It is powerful because it is psychologically accurate. He was training his mind not to be shocked by human nature. He was refusing to build his day on fantasy. He understood that if you expect the world to be constantly fair, polished, and emotionally convenient, you will spend your life offended. But if you expect resistance, you become harder to surprise and harder to break. This exercise matters because the average person is emotionally ambushed by ordinary life. They act as if traffic should not exist, as if difficult people should not exist, as if stress, setbacks, and foolishness are somehow unfair intrusions into a life that should otherwise run smoothly. The Stoic does not grant himself that illusion. He says, "Today there will be friction, and I will still remain sovereign." That changes everything. Anticipation does not create suffering. It creates armor. The third protocol is to define your circle of control. This is the great dividing line between a reactive day and an undefeated one. Before the world begins demanding your energy, you must remind yourself what actually belongs to you and what does not. Your thoughts, your intentions, your choices, your effort, your judgments. These belong to you. The weather does not. Traffic does not. The economy does not. Other people's moods do not. Their opinions do not. Their gratitude does not. Their loyalty does not. Their intelligence does not. Their fairness does not. This sounds obvious until you examine how most people actually live. They wake up and immediately start trying to manage what is not theirs. They worry about impressions, outcomes, delays, recognition, public image. They exhaust themselves emotionally on variables they do not control, then wonder why they feel powerless. The Stoic begins the morning with a ruthless correction. I control my response. I control my conduct. I control my standards. Everything else is weather. This mental circle is not a trick. It is a liberation device. Because suffering expands in direct proportion to the number of things you think you must control. The more reality you try to dominate, the more anxious you become. But when you reduce your concern to what is truly yours, you recover power instantly. The day stops looking like a threat and starts looking like a field for practice. The fourth thing you do is take a self-retreat, not a vacation, not escapism, not fantasy, a retreat inward. The modern person believes peace is somewhere else, in another city, on a beach, in the mountains, in a cabin, in a relationship, in a different job, in a different version of life. But Marcus Aurelius understood something devastatingly simple. Chaotic. No change of scenery will save you. You will bring your unrest with you. You will sit on a perfect beach and still worry. You will travel to silence and still hear yourself. The Stoic self-retreat is the refusal to run. It is the decision to sit alone, in stillness, and enter your own mind without distractions. 5 to 10 minutes is enough if it is real. No phone, no scrolling, no music, no borrowed stimulation. Just you, breathing, watching, noticing. At first, this feels uncomfortable for most people, because when external noise stops, internal noise becomes audible. Regrets begin speaking, fears begin speaking, insecurities begin speaking. And this is exactly why the practice is necessary. You cannot master a mind you refuse to meet in silence. Most people are not afraid of being alone. They are afraid of hearing what remains when distraction is gone. But that is where freedom begins. When you can sit in a quiet room with your thoughts and not run, you stop being easy to manipulate. You stop needing constant escape. You stop depending on external stimulation just to feel normal. That is the beginning of internal authority. The fifth protocol is the view from above. This is one of the most beautiful and brutal exercises in Stoicism because it attacks the ego directly. In the morning, the mind loves to inflate itself. It treats every meeting, every message, every inconvenience as if it were the center of the universe. A delayed email becomes a crisis. A difficult conversation becomes a catastrophe. The view from above breaks this hypnosis. You mentally rise above your life, above your room, above your city, above your country, above the planet. You observe everything at once. Traffic, arguments, romance, commerce, politics, ambition, fear, hope, noise, grief, laughter, death, creation, destruction. Then you look back at your problem, not to dismiss it, but to right-size it. This exercise is not meant to make you passive. It is meant to cure your narcissism. It teaches you that your immediate emotional weather is not the center of existence. Most people are crushed by life because their scale is too small. They live trapped inside their own urgency. They do not zoom out. The Stoic does. And in that expansion, panic loses its glamour. Problems shrink to proportion. You remember that existence is larger than your latest irritation. The sixth protocol is the stripping method. This is where the Stoic begins destroying emotional distortion at its root. The mind is constantly adding drama to reality. It adds prestige, shame, glamour, fear, insult, urgency, fantasy. It converts neutral situations into emotionally loaded stories. The stripping method peels all of that away. A luxury object becomes material. A humiliating comment becomes sound. A terrifying email becomes words on a screen. A social threat becomes a scenario in the mind. Marcus Aurelius would look at expensive food and reduce it to dead fish or cooked meat. He would look at wine and call it fermented grapes, not because he hated pleasure, but because he refused to be hypnotized by surface appearances. Most suffering is not caused by reality. It is caused by the theatrical costume the mind puts on reality. The stripping method removes the costume. It brings things back to their objective form. Once that happens, you are no longer reacting to glamour or fear. You are responding to facts. This is one of the most practical tools you can use in the morning because it lets you face the day without fantasy. You stop treating everything as sacred or catastrophic. You become much harder to seduce and much harder to scare. The seventh protocol is contemplation of the ideal. Before you enter the world, you must decide who you are trying to be. Most people drift through the day with no moral target. They react to events without a standard. They adapt their personality to convenience. The Stoics refuse that drift. They train themselves against an image of character. What would the strongest, most disciplined, most just version of me do today? What would a wise person sound like under pressure? What would a courageous person refuse? What would a disciplined person ignore? This is not performance, it is orientation. You need a standard, or the day will shape you randomly. If you do not consciously define your posture before the world hits you, the world will define it for you. Contemplation of the ideal gives the day a spine. It gives your choices direction. It helps you remember that the morning is not only about managing tasks, it is about building a person. The eighth protocol is voluntary discomfort. This is where modern people usually get sentimental and weak, because they hear the phrase and think it means self-punishment. It does not. It means removing your dependence on ease. You do not need to suffer dramatically, but you need to prove to yourself that comfort is not your master. Drink only water for a while. Skip the easy pleasure. Step into cold water. Walk in cold air. Move your body before it feels convenient. Delay the impulse to indulge. Make one hard choice before the day makes 10 hard things happen to you. Why is this so powerful? Because modern comfort has made people fragile. They have become emotionally dependent on smoothness. If the room is too hot, they complain. If the coffee is late, they complain. If the Wi-Fi is slow, they complain. A life of constant convenience creates a nervous system that panics at the slightest friction. Voluntary discomfort retrains that system. It reminds you, I do not need ideal conditions to remain stable. And once you realize that, the day loses much of its ability to intimidate you. Discomfort stops feeling like an emergency. It becomes familiar, usable, even welcome. You stop negotiating with difficulty. You stop asking life to soften for you. You become harder. The ninth protocol is negative visualization. This one sounds dark to people who do not understand it, but it is one of the most profound tools the Stoics had. Human beings adapt quickly. We normalize what we have. We stop seeing it. We stop appreciating it. We stop feeling the miracle of it. Health becomes normal. Home becomes normal. People become normal. Vision becomes normal. Safety becomes normal. Then, when anything is threatened, we panic. Why? Because we built our attachment on unconscious entitlement. Negative visualization destroys entitlement and replaces it with gratitude. You take a moment and imagine loss, not to torture yourself, but to see clearly. Imagine losing your sight, losing your possessions, losing a relationship, losing the comfort you now treat as ordinary. Suddenly, the day changes. Coffee becomes less trivial. Shelter becomes more astonishing. A conversation becomes more precious. You stop walking through your life like a bored owner and start moving through it like a temporary guest. This changes the emotional quality of the morning profoundly. Gratitude becomes real, not motivational. And fear loses some of its grip because you have already looked at loss directly. You are no longer pretending fragility doesn't exist. You are training yourself to remain stable in the face of impermanence. The 10th protocol is journaling and philanthropy. This is where your morning stops being private self-optimization and becomes ethical architecture. The Stoics did not believe in building a strong mind merely to become self-obsessed. Strength was for service. Clarity was for right action. Discipline was for justice. So you write, not aimlessly, not sentimentally. You write your intentions, your weaknesses, your standards, what you are likely to face today, what vice you are trying to resist, what virtue you are trying to practice. You design the day on paper before the day starts designing you. Writing slows the mind down. It forces structure. It reveals vagueness. It turns feelings into thought and thought into choice. Then you remember something larger. You do not live alone. Stoicism is not isolation. It is disciplined participation in the human community. You set an intention, not only to remain calm, but to be useful, to be just, to be patient with ignorance, to not become arrogant because you are trying to be disciplined, to remember that the people around you are also trapped in their own confusion, fear, and impulses. Hierocles imagined concentric circles of concern: self, family, neighbors, citizens, humanity. The Stoic practice is to draw outer circles inward, to behave as though others are not obstacles in your day, but fellow workers in the same unfinished human project. This final protocol matters because many disciplined people become hard in the wrong way. They become cold, performative, superior. That is not Stoicism. Stoicism is strength without cruelty, boundaries without hatred, clarity without contempt. The morning is not just about becoming psychologically untouchable. It is about becoming ethically awake. Now, bring all of this together. Most people lose the day because they begin it unconsciously. They wake into noise, urgency, comparison, and reaction. They start as victims of interruption. Then they spend the rest of the day trying to repair a mind they gave away before sunrise. But the Stoic morning is a reversal of that process. First, gratitude, then preparation, then control, then silence, then perspective, then clarity, then identity, then discomfort, then mortality, then purpose. Each protocol takes something the world normally uses against you and turns it into training. Anxiety becomes a signal to narrow control. Noise becomes a reason for retreat. Desire becomes a chance to strip illusion. Comfort becomes a place to practice resistance. Loss becomes a doorway to gratitude. Human chaos becomes a chance to practice patience. This is why the morning matters so much. It is not just a period of time. It is the part of the day in which your soul is most negotiable. If you do not shape it deliberately, it will be shaped by whatever reaches it first: the phone, the market, the inbox, the crowd, the algorithm. The Stoics knew that if you lose the first battle, every battle afterward becomes harder. So they fortified the morning. And that is the real point of all of this. Not to make you productive, not to make you aesthetically disciplined, not to make you feel superior, but to make you free. Free from reactivity, free from emotional dependence on conditions, free from the need for a perfect day before you can have a stable mind. You do not need to perform every protocol perfectly. You do not need to turn your morning into a ritualized prison. You need to reclaim it from unconsciousness. Blend the practices. Walk in the cold while reflecting on mortality. Sit in silence before journaling. Practice negative visualization while watching the sunrise. The exact structure matters less than the spirit. The spirit is this: the day does not own my mind before I do. Because once your morning belongs to you, the rest of the day begins to obey a different logic. You move slower, but with more power. You speak less, but with more intention. You are harder to provoke, harder to seduce, harder to distract. Problems still happen. People are still selfish. Traffic still exists. The market still fluctuates. But you are no longer entering the day empty and exposed. You are entering it armed. That is what the Stoics built. Not a lifestyle, a fortress, an inner citadel, a mind that cannot be entered without permission, a mind that does not panic when events do not cooperate, a mind that does not depend on the world being gentle in order to remain sane. And if you begin building that mind every morning, then something remarkable happens. The day may still be chaotic, but you are not. The world may still be unstable, but you are not. The crowd may still be unconscious, but you are no longer one of them. You stop living as a sleeper. You stop waking as a servant to the outside world. You become the one thing modern life tries hardest to prevent: internally governed. So tomorrow morning, before the world gets its hands on your mind, do something different. Open your eyes and remember you are alive. Prepare for friction. Draw the circle. Retreat inward. Zoom out. Strip illusion. Define your character. Step into discomfort. Remember what can be lost. Write with intention. Walk into the day as a citizen of reason, not a hostage of noise. Because the morning is not just the start of the day. It is the place where you either surrender your freedom or reclaim it. And if you reclaim it there, before breakfast, the world will find you much harder to break.